Hello, 6th graders. Welcome to Big Ideas Math, 7th grade math, section 1.4, multiplying integers lesson. Pause while you write section 1.4 lesson in your math notebook. Pause again while you write today's lesson objective. Find the product of integers in your math notebook. Today we'll be starting on page 24 in your math textbook. You should start by copying these key ideas into your math notebook. The first one is multiplying integers with the same sign. The product of two integers with the same sign is positive, and it gives you a couple of examples. And multiplying integers with different signs, the product of two integers with different signs is negative. Now, the reason I circled two integers is because sometimes you are multiplying more than two integers. So, for example, if you were multiplying negative 1 times positive 6 times negative 2, you would multiply the numbers as normal. 1 times 6 is 6 times 2 is 12. And then what you do is you count the number of negative signs, and if it is an even number, then your answer is positive. So an even number is positive. If it's an odd number, it's going to be negative. So let's do an example of that. So if you had negative 2 times negative 3 times negative 5, that would be 2 times 3, which would be 6 times 5 is 30. And then your answer would be negative because there are 3 negative signs, and that's an odd number. So if there's an odd number of negative signs, then your answer is going to be negative. So be sure you make a note of that in your notebook so that you understand how to figure out the sign of your product. So let's do a couple of examples here. Multiplying integers with the same sign, we have negative 5 times negative 6, and the integers have the same sign, so there's an even number of negative signs. There are two of them. So negative 5 times negative 6 equals a positive 30, so the product is 30. Example 2, different signs when there are two of them. 3 times negative 4 equals negative 12, so the product of is negative. So here we have one negative sign. So negative 7 times positive 4 equals negative 28. Let's go on to page 25, example number 3, using exponents. Read the study tip off to the side that says to place parentheses around a negative number to raise it to a power. So when we evaluate negative 2 to the second power, we write negative 2 to the second power as repeated multiplication. Take a look at your problem, and it has the negative 2 in parentheses. So that means that the negative sign is inside the parentheses. So when we write out our problem, the negative it travels with our 2. So it gets repeated every time we do the exponent. So negative 2 times negative 2. So there are two negative signs. So when we multiply it, since there are two negative signs, we have a positive at the end. So 2 times 2 is 4. which gives us a positive 4. Now let's look at letter B. We're asked to evaluate negative 5 to the second power, and there is no parentheses around the 5. So when we write 5 squared as repeated multiplication, we don't write each 5 in its own parentheses. We write them together and we put the negative sign on the outside. That's a very important distinction to make. So we have 5 times 5 equals 25, and since there's only one negative sign, our answer is negative. And then we're going to move on to letter C. We're evaluating negative 4 to the third power. Once again, we have the negative 4 in parentheses, so the negative sign is going to travel with the 4, and when we write our negative 4 to the third power as repeated multiplication, we write the negative sign each time. So it's negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4. And 4 times 4 equals 16. And that's positive. If you just take two of them, that's going to be positive because a negative times a negative equals a positive. And then you have 16 times 4, which equals 64, and that's a positive times a negative, so that's going to be a negative 64. Remember, if you have questions on this, mark them in your notebook and ask me in class. Let's move on to example 4, which is a real-life application. The bar graph shows the number of taxis a company has in service. The number of taxis decreases by the same amount each year for 4 years. Find the total change in the number of taxis. So the bar graph shows that the number of taxis in service decreases by 50 each year. We're going to use a model to solve the problem. So our model is that the total change, which is what we're asked for, equals the change per year times the number of years. So since it's decreasing, we use a negative number, and it's decreasing by 50 each year, and we're looking at 4 years. So it's negative 50 times 4. So negative 50 times 4, 50 times 4 equals 200, and a negative times a positive equals a negative. So our total change in the number of taxis is negative 200. Your assignment for this lesson is to complete the On Your Own problems 1 through 13 on pages 24 and 25 of your textbook or your online textbook. They are also shown below. Show your work in your notebook and submit your answers in Google Classroom, and be prepared to share during our next class. Please remember to earn credit for viewing this flipped lesson. You need to complete your exit slip back at the website. You also need to come to our next class prepared with the journal pages that we did during the flipped lesson or any other work that we did for the flipped lesson completed. You also need to be prepared with any work that was assigned in the flipped lesson completed, and be ready with any questions you have for your teacher, and as always, have a good attitude. We'll see you tomorrow in class. Remember to earn credit for viewing this flipped lesson. You must complete your exit slip. You must come to our next class prepared with your journal pages or any other work that we did during the flipped lesson completed, and you need to be prepared with any work that was assigned during the flipped lesson completed. Be prepared with any questions you have about the content of the flipped lesson, and a good attitude. We'll see you in class tomorrow.